because of that, and we will literally be able to walk through the rest of the hologram as if it isn't there. Because in our flash line it isn't. But all the flash lines are actually just pulses of consciousness that take place in the same space. We are all within God. We never move away from God. It all exists. We are thought forms in the hologram of the mind of God. And we are the mind of God as well. Everything in the universe is a face of God. So there's a hugeness and a smallness that go right hand in hand together with understanding this. We can go for billions of years and billions of miles while we're in hologram. In fact, our hologram will expand to keep up with our thoughts. We will find new angles to explore that weren't there before because we think they might be able to be there. Because we are created in the image of God. Humans were created in the image of God, which means they are consciousness that just by thought has the empowerment to create. How did God create this reality field? Thought it. Decided, let's try that. Thought it, felt it. Made it happen. Humans do the same thing, but we forgot that we do it. Okay, let's say
I'm sorry, Fran.
What were you
talking to me?
Okay, now, dimensions are organized into sets of three full flashline sequences, or 3 frequency bands, that create the template through which three-dimensional manifestation can be experienced. Each set of 3 dimensions is called a harmonic universe, as we talked about yesterday. There are 5 harmonic universes within a 15-dimensional time matrix. Each dimension contains 12 primary sub-frequency bands, which if you took a flashline sequence and just looked at this part of it, that would be that one. It's almost like doing squiggles around and round and round. Because a flashline is this, but within it, it has these little loops where it makes little cycles. If you look at this as a time cycle, these are little time continuums that run within them. Just like we have cycles that run nature. We have the cycles of the seasons. We have the cycles of the tides. We have cycles of day to night. We have cycles of years. We have cycles of millennia. Time is circular. It's a cycle. It always comes back to the same point, and then you have a chance to jump up to the next flash line. And if you don't make it, you go back and you repeat the same stuff all over again. Okay, yes?
The bigger picture you were talking about earlier, when you were talking about the hologram. Now, within that larger scheme, what is outside that holographic, or is that even part of the sort of our comprehension? What is outside that hologram?
Okay, what if you expand it all the way up past the 15-dimensional matrix, what is outside of there? Is that what you're asking? Okay, I'll get to that in a second. Because we're going to put that back up, that diagram, and I'll use that to go there. I'll ask that. Okay. Okay, we got that. I'm just seeing if we have to cover these up. What? Okay, yeah, let's go back to this one now. This is where we left off yesterday. Now, she'd asked a good question. She'd say, what's it like when you get out of here? Okay, if we're stationed down in here in our hologram, what's it like out here? Now, out here is source. All right, that's source consciousness that we talked about yesterday. This is a 15-dimensional time matrix, and when we expand out of the directly dimensionalized system into the primal light fields, then into the primal sound fields, and the last expansion is out into source. What is that like? Was the question. What's it like when you get out there? Well, let's put it this way. You can remember some of it if you have experienced a full set of ascension, which means that you've come in to the hologram and literally made your way back out, and you have your DNA all the way up, encoded, where you have the memory files. That's the difference between becoming an ascended master and having an ascended master consciousness that you don't remember having. Is you create the sequence back in your DNA template by activating the DNA. You remember what it was like up there. There are some things of what it's like when you get past here that you just can't put words on. They don't fit. You can't draw pictures because you are beyond sound. You are beyond light. You are therefore beyond form. You're beyond externalization of any kind. You're also beyond individuation while having a memory of any individuation you ever experimented with. So you will know every self you ever were. And you will know you were always much more than that. There are states of direct cognition. The greatest way I can explain it, really, is a continual state of cosmic direct cognition, of knowing. And there are awesome qualities of it, where there is no fear there. The things we call emotion, and the way emotion works here. You progressively, emotion turns into something else as you move up in your evolution, as you become a soul-integrated person, then an oversoul-integrated, then a Christos avatar, and then a Rishi, and then an ascended master. It's not that you don't have emotion, or you don't feel, or you don't understand it. But you get into this space where everything's okay, no matter what it is. And that doesn't mean you approve of things that are made to create harm. But you're able to see the lessons that consciousness is teaching itself. And you also respect the other aspects of consciousness enough to not inflict your will on them and say, you can't learn that way because I know a better way. There's a great understanding and compassion that comes. And this is why there's a saying, God allows. God does allow. God doesn't make bad stuff happen. God allows us to experiment with what it means to be manifest, because God is learning through each of us as well. Even though God, that consciousness, knows it all already, because time, learning, implies that there's a point where one didn't know something, there's a point where one is. If time isn't real, which once you get out of here, time isn't real, it implies that it's all known already anyway. It also implies, or it might, the logical mind might think it implies that everything is predestined, which means we don't have free will, which means we got stuck here by somebody, even if it's our higher self, and we just have a life path that we have to live, and whatever we do doesn't make any difference because it's going to happen to us anyway. That's not the way it is. We do have free will. We have been given, like Source, created in the image of God, the ability to directly affect with our thoughts and desires what the hologram we see personally is going to be. It becomes a part of the divine blueprint. When we think a thought, it has the ability to expand the divine blueprint. If it is a thought that is not in harmony with the divine blueprint, it has the ability to erode the divine blueprint. So we are entrusted and given a gift of free will while we're here, but we're entrusted with a responsibility that goes with it. When we get beyond here, it's all a game. In the mind of God, in the heart of God, it's a beloved game. Everybody is loved hugely, because Source, when you are at one with Source, it recognizes every being that was ever manifest as a part of itself. It recognizes the struggles, the things that were learned in that framework, the things that were experienced. There's a huge love. God does not pass judgment on us. That was a lie that was put in to manipulate people here in order to make them subservient to outside external authorities, which are anti-Christos teachings that were meant to take you away from your inner Christos and your direct connection of Source and plug you in to an external source's authority so it could steal your energy. Right now, we're learning to get our connection back. And with it, there's going to be changes. We'll watch our emotions grow, sometimes turbulently, where you're clearing out your DNA template and all sorts of stuff starts to kick up and you just feel really grouchy and lousy and you want to bite, or you feel really weepy and you just want to cry and you have no idea why. It has to do with what happened 2 million years ago in the incarnation you have there. You just don't remember that part, you're just getting the tears. You know? Or you may get manic, where you just feel the times that once upon a time I knew I had the power. There's sometimes all of us have had experiences of mastery of some sort or another. There are times where you may have, where you go out in... this can happen in nature a lot, because there were times when this race were masters of the elemental kingdoms. Talk about Merlins and things like that. We didn't need Merlin, wizards and stuff, because we had a direct relationship with the consciousness of dimension 1 and 2, which are called the Manu consciousness, the elementals. We could direct the weather by thought and will and heart. And as long as we didn't abuse that, it wouldn't abuse us. The weather was great. The consciousness that controls the weather patterns and the natural earth patterns, you could direct tides. If you were nice, if you understood it was a co-creative experience, which means you're not going to inflict your will on that thing, call it an ocean. You're not going to inflict your will on it and treat it as if it's not conscious, so it's going to do your bidding. The way this race used to have the power to interface with the elements and to get them to do what they wanted was out of love, because they would recognize that the molecules that compose the other things were just as conscious as they were, and they were just as much a part of God as the self was. And there was a loving co-creative relationship where if you were out in a boat on an ocean, and the sea started to kick up, first thing you think was, anything I can do to help you? Is something bothering you, spirit of the ocean, right now? Obviously, you're throwing energy around. Is this just something you need to do? And if it's just something you need to do and I can't help you, can you do it over there or help me to get over here so it doesn't harm me? We would have these abilities, and we would have conversations sometimes like that. But most often they came right from here, and there were no words even involved because it was a language beyond words that you didn't need, but you could feel the power and the love of connecting with the planet that way. There may be times as you go through DNA activation that you begin to feel a kick of that come up, and you just feel like, wow. It's like this energy rush that comes into you that you feel the beginnings of your greatness, of what it meant to be a great avatar being. So there are going to be times when you're pulled this way and pulled that way, and emotions are doing this and they're doing that, and you kind of need to sit back and allow. Be godlike with it. Okay, we'll allow that. The emotions know what they're doing. They're trying to clear themselves. If you feel like throwing something or whacking somebody, try to point it at something that's not going to be harmed, you know? But be prepared for it. Okay, we'll go past this now, please. That's the 15-dimensional time matrix.
Yeah, sub-frequency.
Yeah. Okay, this chart simply shows you the structure of sub-frequency bands. All right, we have, it didn't change the numbering on yet. There's a little flip that happens in the dimensional scale and a 15-dimensional time matrix that it has to do with expansion and contraction and reversals, but it really belongs in like Cathara level 3 or 4 to even worry about it because we don't use it. This chart was made when I was playing with it at that level, like trying to put the teaching together. So this is why you have 1, 4, 3, 2, 5. It means the same thing as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, it's just showing that you have 1 here, you have 2, and 3, and wait, no, 3, then 4, then 5. There's a mathematical thing that was happening there. So on this chart, just realize each one of these is a harmonic universe. Okay, dimensions 1, 2, 3. Okay, these are actually, I need to change this chart. I just looked at this. Without using the other system and showing you where the 15-dimensional matrix plugged in with their certain reversals, this actually is very confusing. I'm looking at this and wait a minute, that isn't right. These aren't right. This would be the harmonic universe. Yeah, that is harmonic universe 4. Let me see what this is. I haven't used this chart in a while, by the way, this one. It kind of got stuck in there to illustrate the concept of sub-frequency bands. Yeah, actually it isn't too bad. All right, I'm confusing it with another chart that had a whole set of numbers here that had to do with counting kilons. All right, because there's a different number of kilons, which are the primary codes. Remember, kilons are 3-dimensional groupings of particle. They form 3-dimensional particle grids. They form kilons, and kilons group together to form more crystallization called kilon codes. Later we'll learn that means fire letters. We'll learn the term fire letters, and some of you might have heard of the word fire letters in relation to DNA. So I was just trying to look at this and see that's not the chart with the fire letters on it. What this one means is harmonic universe 1 is dimensions 1, 2, and 3. It's actually density level 1. Has 12 sub-frequency bands for each one, so there's 36 primary sub-frequency bands there. Now if you add all these up, they each have 12 sub-frequency bands in them. So you get 180 sub-frequency bands, 12 times 15 running there. And then you have another set of them running in the antiparticle universe. Okay? So you have 15 dimensions here and another 15 there. You have the 180 sub-frequency bands here and another 180 there. You get a spherical reality field. Okay. Yeah, this isn't that important. Okay, let's go to and this one shows you just the density levels that go with it, the matter density levels. Okay. It shows you the dimension number, the harmonic universe number, and the density and the type of matter, which is kind of interesting. All right? Harmonic universe 1, where we are, dimensions 1, 2, and 3. We have carbon-based biology. It's considered physical or gross matter density, where carbon, the biological life forms here, are built on a carbon base. This is why they do carbon dating to test things and those kind of things. The molecules, carbon molecules, are an intrinsic part of the life field on Earth and in density 1 systems. When we get up to density 2, and that means if we had strands 4, 5, and 6 fully activated all the time, and that was a flash line sequence running through our bodies, we wouldn't be here anymore. We'd be in harmonic universe 2. That has a carbon-silica-based biology, where the carbon is starting to transmute into silica crystals, which is like crystal. As we move up, it gets more and more silica-based. We are crystalline life forms. And that progressively begins to show itself the higher up the density scale we go, the higher dimensional scale we go. In harmonic universe 3, dimensions 7, 8, and 9, this is the semi-etheric. This is the semi-etheric. This is the etheric state of matter that we talked about yesterday. Silica-based biology. That means literally crystal beings, crystalline matter form, where right now we have carbon molecules in our matter manifestation. When you get up to harmonic universe 3, you are dealing with a matter form that doesn't have carbon molecules in it anymore, which makes it very different from here. There are beings in these reality fields that look like, I've met a few of them too, that look like, it's amazing to even think of them as intelligent beings, and they're a lot more intelligent than we are because their body forms are capable of holding more than what we can hold right now. But they look like spirals of crystals, crystal fibers. They don't have feet and arms and heads like we do. They're living crystalline matrices, some of them. There are also beings that look like very ghostly crystalline hominids. And that's what our race looks like up there as we get into the etheric matter and then go into the pre-matter beyond it. We get into pre-matter, dimensions 10, 11, 12. That's the Christos levels. Crystalline liquid light. So it goes from being silica crystals, hard stuff, into those crystals start to melt and dissolve. So it's a crystalline liquid light. It's called hydroplasm. And then in D13, 14, and 15, when we fully expand our bodies to become our rishi selves again, your standing wave patterns, it's our flame body. It's made of antimatter, gaseous light. And then when we move out of the time matrix, we go back to vibrating units of sound, progressively demanifest. So these are the matter density levels that go with the dimensional structure and the harmonic universe structure. Now this little diagram over here illustrates the 5 harmonics of manifestation in one 15-dimensional time matrix. When we showed you the 15-dimensional matrix to show you where the dimensions fit, it looked like this kind of pie in the sky thing, and here's one circle, here's another, here's another, here's another. That was to show you, so you could see strung out, where the dimensional correspondences were. The way each of those reality fields, those spherical reality fields exist, they're nested. Okay? You'd have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Harmonic universe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which means we're in here. To get out here, you don't have to move over there. You need to expand. So the process of getting ourselves out of density is the reverse of the process we used to get ourselves into density, which was to contract ourselves. Once we were at one with God, we contracted ourselves to get in here. Now we expand ourselves to get out. And that expansion is a physical process of energy, and physical referring to all of the physical levels all the way up in the time matrix. Any manifest level that has matter has a level of physicality to it. It might not be physicality like we know it. So we expand back out, and we can ascend by literally bringing back the frequencies and the flashline sequences of the higher dimensional fields back into our body matter. And that's what we're beginning to learn to do with Cathara healing. Okay? Next.
Just checks on the districts. From the point of starting with universal and planetary is out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's 12:30 now. Do they want to have a break for 15 minutes? And how do you want to run the next
I would rather
hour?
get through this and then do like lunch instead of break and then lunch and that kind of stuff.
About 2 o'clock then, really.
Let's get through this section. All right, you guys still you don't want to do a break yet, do you? You all right? Thank you. Yes, sir. I'd like to get through the Cathara grids and where we can start chapter 2 after lunch.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about what time we were going to do the lunch break. Usually what I do when I do the long days is I have like a 15-minute break, then a regular lunch break, then a 15-minute afternoon break and the thing. But I think I'm going to try to combine them and probably get rid of the 15-minute ones and just do lunch, and then we'll do, dinner or whatever, if you don't mind. Okay? All right. Now we get into some interesting stuff. This is where we begin to explore the core of the templates. We know that there's part A, part chi, and part com. We know they form standing wave units. We know standing columnar waves. We know that those standing columnar scalar waves go in groups that form different dimensionalized structures of matter. We know we have flashline sequences that are the things that govern the speed at which the dimensions flash on and off. Now, there is a series of levels. If it was just the levels we've talked about, we'd all just be sitting in a bunch of flashing on and off waves, and we wouldn't see the hologram of matter. So there's these series of templates that build up from those primal units. Now the primal units of part chi, part k, part chem form standing scalar waves that are crystalline waves, because groups of Particuli units come together, form Particuli grids, and then form three-dimensional Particuli grids, which form chelons. So we are talking, this is why this is called chelontic science. All right? These chelons that are the crystalline morphogenetic blueprints upon which all templates manifest, including the 15-dimensional matrix. There is a core mathematical program that controls the formation of chelons, that controls and holds the mathematical program of the universal template, of the cosmic template within which the smaller universal templates exist, and right down into every microcosmic aspect of creation. You will have the same core mathematical program. The hologram is built on a base 12 mathematical system, which means there are 12 primary unit programs that control the manifestation and the mathematical relationships between all of the different particles and their formation. Now, there's something called a Cathara grid. Cathara is it's a word derived from a longer Anahazi word that means light, sound, one. Light, sound, and one, or unity, referring to one source. Okay, so ka, light, ta, sound, ra, one. The sound tones ra were used, before they got abused by the Egyptians, to mean the one. But then it got all twisted in Egyptian times and used to mean many different things that had nothing to do with the one. All right, so Cathara means light, sound, one, source, grid. It is the first level of Particuli structure, the first level of the scalar grid that gets organized mathematically. It's the first mathematical program. It is the core holographic template upon which morphogenetic field blueprints are structured. That means there is a foundation, core level, that sets and controls the programs for all the other levels that are built upon it. You have a Cathara grid level. Now, if we look at the 15-dimensional time matrix, and you have these 15 flash line sequences, there's something that synchronizes all these. They start someplace, and they start with one point of frequency vibration placed in first each of the 12 dimensions, and then there is another set. There are two Cathara grids and the universal Cathara, and I'll show you what a Cathara grid is in a minute. The first one goes from dimension 1 to dimension 12. Actually, first, depending on if you're going out or incoming. If you were coming down from source, the first one extends from the acatic energy matrix sound fields through the 3 levels of the sound fields there, and then down into dimension 13. You would get 12 points of consolidated frequency that form the primal light and sound fields. And then there is another reflection of that forms D12 down to D1. These are, in each dimensional level, there would be one point where the original mathematical program that was supposed to control all of the mathematical relationships in that dimension was placed in. So you have 12 points of frequency, and they have very specific relationships to each other, their own mathematical relationships to each other. We can begin to understand this mathematical program enough without being a computer programming expert and having to know all about, using numbers. There's a way to understand this in a way that is very usable, in a way we can use those 12 points of frequency that are the core of every template as a map to know what frequency to run, a map to understand what our body systems are built on, a map to know where to reprogram what from, and when we go into Templar courses, like next weekend, it is literally the Universal Stargate map, and it shows you where what is located, like where gates are and everything. But it exists in the body as well, called the Cathara grid. The Cathara grid is the core holographic template for dimensionalization of the unified field. So it is literally what holds the program, the mathematical program, for dimensionalization itself. All those complex coordinates that allow sets of 15 dimensions to flash at the right sequences, at the right time, in the right way, at the right angles to each other. All of that program is held in 12 points from D1 to 12, and 12 more points from D13 up to the acatic level of the primal sound fields. Okay? There are 3 primary levels to the Cathara grid. You have level 1, it's called the 12-tree grid, and you'll see why in a minute, and it's probably something you've seen before. Okay, level 1, the 12-tree grid. which has Cathara centers and Cathara lines on it. That is the first level. That's the first 12 points, and the lines, flash lines that begin to connect those points. There's level 2, which is called the crystal seals grid. And this has part of it as Hoover bodies and scalar shields. These are part of the anatomy you probably haven't heard of in about probably at least 10,000 years. So you're going to get a refresher course on this one. Then level 3 is called the dyadic point grid. It's a system of black and white hole sets that build on top of the other 2 levels. These are the beginnings of how energy, as primal current, comes in from source, contracts into the time matrix. First it takes on the form of the first set of 12 mathematical programs in the level 1 Cathara grid, and then the next set of 12. We're going to be working with the set from D1 up to 12 first, before we worry about the higher level ones. It then takes on more of that imprint and takes on the crystal seals level. And this is where we get Hoover bodies, which are bubbles of energy that we get to walk around on. And it's because the way those bubbles of energy, electromagnetic energy, bend light and consciousness and sound, that we get the ability to project out through our consciousness what looks like a three-dimensional hologram that's quite solid. Or at least it appears to be. Okay. The dyadic point grid. This gets fun, because when we first get into it, we're not going to talk too much about it. That's more a part of what would be Cathara level 3. But the new stuff that we're getting gets more into this. Dyadic points have to do with Merkaba. They have to do with Merkaba fields and understanding what they are and why they're important. So these are the 3 basic levels. We're going to learn how to use the Cathara level 112 tree grid, and we're going to learn a bit about the crystal seals grid, because more and more the Cathara work and the ascension work that we're getting with the Dance of Life program coming out is getting into understanding the crystal seals and Hoover bodies, particularly crystal seals, because these are things, areas in our body that hold frequency in a specific way. They control the Merkaba fields. They control the way consciousness moves into the body and how much of it can. And right now, we're in an amazing period of time. Because our bodies are indelibly connected to the planet, whether we like it or not, we are going through a Stargate opening cycle, literally, between the year 2000 and 2012. That means Stargate frequencies are activating in the planetary grids. A full 12-dimensional activation has not occurred here, with all 12 Stargates opening. Has not occurred here for over 200,000 years. In the Atlantean period, they had Gate 5 open, and they created a real mess. What happens to the people and the beings and the things on a planet during a Stargate cycle is their DNA responds to the frequency. So whether or not you ever take a Cathara course, your DNA is going to activate, whether or not it's ready to hold the frequency. The world is in for a rush. That's kind of putting it mildly. Yeah, we're going to have the whole world having hot flashes in a couple of years. We're going to find out that men can do menopause too. Because a lot of the feelings that women have DNA that draws in a little faster, where men have DNA that throws out a little faster. So there's a transmitter and a receiver. We're both a little bit better at, where our DNA is characteristic of. We both transmit and receive. But women tend to pick up the changes first. A lot of stuff that's being said, that, this is menopause, it's this new word that modern science in the last 100 years has invented called menopause, when it has, our hormones do all sorts of weird things, and we get like hot flashes and can't sleep at night, and our bone density is supposed to go down, and all this kind of horrible stuff that we have to look forward to after we turn 40. A lot of this is being mistaken. What is really happening is DNA activation. The DNA has been activating for the last 100 years, slowly, little pulses of it, but slowly climbing. Since January 2000, DNA is coming home with a vengeance. It's saying we've been sleeping too long, and the planet is sending the frequencies up through the grids, and those frequencies are coming up through our biosystems that we'll learn about soon. And it's triggering DNA activation. Now, right now, the species has really messy distortions in the DNA templates, which means it's going to amplify disease in people who don't know how to clear it. It means it's going to have all sorts of wacky feelings happening in your body, even when you're working with Cathara. But when you're working with Cathara, you're clearing stuff. You're getting stuff out of the way, so your activations will go naturally. But if you say, this is too heavy for me, I don't want to do DNA activation. Well, unless you have a space shuttle out of here, you don't have a choice. The planet is doing DNA activation. Plants are going to be responding in their own way. Animals are responding. Crystals are responding in the planetary grids. There are changes that are occurring. And there are some of them that science is aware of and going, whoa, what's that? I don't know what that is. I don't know. That's not supposed to do that. No, it isn't, does it? What does it mean? I don't know. Do you know? This is some of the things that are happening, particularly in the underground science movements. They're aware of weird stuff going on, and they can't explain it. And at least, this is why they're called radicals, because at least if they can't explain something, they think they have something to learn. And they don't immediately pretend it doesn't exist. Where mainstream science tends to say, if it's not in our books, it's not real, right? Which means you can't learn anything. So there are changes happening now. You may have had some of them. Sometimes there's cycles of bone pain, where just your bones hurt, not just your joints, but your joints and your bones. Sometimes there's a good old tailbone kick, where you walk around for a week feeling like somebody kicked you in the tailbone. This is where your craniosacral seals are starting to activate, which implies that on the other end of the tailbone, in your head, you may be having pain. There may be cycles of headaches that come. There may be cycles of vision, either getting better or much worse for no apparent reason. There may be cycles of hearing, increasing or decreasing. You may start to hear inner voices, but you can't hear things outside anymore for a while. Right now, what people are going to start going through, if they went to modern medicine and modern psychiatry to help them, they better build some really, really big mental hospitals, because we'd all be in them. People are going to start having the whites of their eyes activate to where they're seeing more of the interdimensional spectrum. Did you see that? No, I didn't, but I did. I saw that too. Was it? Are we crazy? No. You know, we have these conversations with people. You can tell there's people out there seeing UFOs right now. And there's 99% of the population, oh, they don't exist. You know, yeah, right. About our scalar shields and the planetary scalar shields. But these are the templates of energy. If you look at primal life force current as is contracting in, as their source is breathing energy into this time matrix. It breathes in and it goes through all of these structures to get into manifestation. The consciousness that we have that gives us the ability to say, I am aware, that is coming through. From the primal life force currents, the creation currents, is coming through these structures to get here where you can perceive yourself as being here. It's the same primal life force frequency and consciousness that's allowing your body to manifest. So we're going to learn about the scalar shields and the crystal seals, because these are part of, they're built on the Cathara level 1 template below them, but they begin to regulate and differentiate energy in much more specific ways. If we all just used a Cathara grid template, everything in the whole universe would look the same. The whole hologram would have no differentiation or individuation of form or of identity. So we have the Cathara grid core structures that everybody has, and then progressive mathematical programs are added to them, layers, that give us individuation, that allows one dimension to have a different pattern than another mathematically, so there's a differentiation between them. It allows the difference between a sun and a planet and a star and a person and an ant. It's the differentiation in template that progressively builds up from the common 12 points of a Cathara grid. So we have Cathara level 2, planetary scalar shields, and seals. These are the next level of the regulatory systems that allow energy to begin to take on specific mathematical programs, so we have our individuation. The level 3 Cathara grid is made of sets of minute white and black hole energy vortices. They're made of interdimensional scalar wave spectra that regulate the flux of consciousness and energy between dimensional, harmonic, and parallel antiparticle systems. So there's a connection of energy, like little vortices of energy, little spirals of energy, that connect us not only vertically to the other parts of our consciousness that are stationed in the higher dimensional fields, but they also connect us horizontally to our antiparticle self, to our doppelganger, our double. It gets really weird when you start to integrate your double, because you realize there's another you that looks a lot like you that might have dyed its hair another color, but because it had free will too, that took a line of development in a planet that's similar to this, but not exact. But parallel Earth has had some problems. They have experienced a major invasion there. ETs are very real in their world, and they're terrified of them because they run the place. So when you start to integrate your DNA and it starts to activate, you may start to get strange memories. Where are these ideas coming from? I have a sci-fi movie going on in my head. You know, you may dream it instead, because usually things will begin to come through in the dream state first, before they come through anywhere else. And we're protected with our own avatar consciousness. It's not going to let so much bleed through come through that you get flattened in this life because what's coming through from one of the other reality fields. So your avatar level will balance it. But parallel Earth situation it's a really dire situation there for a lot of people. Okay, yes, excuse me.
Can we help them?
Hey, what?
Can we help?
Can we help parallel? It's a big question. I talk about that a little in the Templar workshop. The dynamics of what that would mean to help there without getting ourselves ensnared in it are massive. However, they are helping us. They are the ones that have helped to make the bridge where this information could be brought in so we could understand what we needed to do in the drama so we didn't get stuck. Now what's happening is being taken care of as far as what's on parallel. The consciousness of the people there, many of them have dropped their bodies to get out so they don't get trapped. But that is we can help by just knowing that they're there and knowing that we all have an avatar self that connects. You and your double are connected to each other through your avatar matrix. That self, your higher self of both of you, will help to guide you. And you'll be able to help. What you're doing here may actually be directly helping the one over there, but you don't know it. So we are helping as far as can we help. There's a lot we can do here. That's what the Templar course is about, as far as helping, understanding what the problem is, first of all, because the parallel Earth issue is only a small one compared to what's going on here. We got our own basket full of mess here to take care of. It's not hard to handle if you know energy and if you know how to play with the vortices in your body and the vortices on the planet. Okay, now, getting into the cosmic morphogenetic structure is built upon interwoven Cathara grids and the dimensionalized scalar standing wave templates they form. This means that from the cosmic level, which when I say cosmic, it's different than when I say universal. When I say cosmic, I'm referring to stuff that includes the primal sound fields, the energy matrix. When I say universal, I'm referring to either a universal time matrix that has 5 harmonic universes in it or one of those universes within it. So universe, you have basically planet, person, planet, galaxy, universe, and cosmos. So there's a difference between cosmos and universe when we talk about them, and then source, of course. All right, we're going to show you 2 diagrams that, to begin with, that start the understanding of the Cathara grid. And this may look similar to something you've seen before. For anybody that has studied the Kabbalah, this was an image that was used in a reversed form, interestingly. Numbers were running in reverse. In the Kabbalah, it only had 10 centers on it. This diagram shows you the 3-dimensional representation. Now remember how I told you symbols, that symbols hold the mathematical programs. If we have a triangle, remember I talked about a triangle, that is a mathematical signature that holds specific mathematical programs. So we can use the symbol to direct the energy. When we are seeing these diagrams, they're not just something I created to illustrate something. They are diagrams that were set in the original texts of the Founders' teachings because they are the symbol codes themselves that hold that whole mathematical representation. When we look at this isn't something you're going to see hanging in the sky. What it actually is the mathematical program translated into a 3-dimensionally perceivable image. When we use that symbol, we are using the Cathara grid. We are going to the core template of the grid. So literally, seeing the graphs themselves as they were done eons ago by the Founders' races, where they were externalized, so we could actually look at that, and the symbols themselves will start teaching us. We will start having things in consciousness open up just by looking at them, by being exposed to them, because they're sending us frequency. Now this is called a Cathara 12-tree grid. It's a level 1 Cathara grid, and that's the first level that we're going to learn to use to begin to bring in the D12 Christos Maharata consciousness. The Maharata ray is what the D12 frequency is called. The Maharata is a word that's drawn, again, from the Anahazi language, the first verbal translation, externalized verbal translation of the actual energy signature that is that frequency. Now what's interesting is when we have a word like Maharata, it refers to the D12 consciousness, the D12 frequency that comes down from the divine blueprint. That word itself would have a light translation, so there would be symbols that represent that as well. And we'll get into that because we're going to use one of those symbols that are the visual translation of the sonic translation that's called Maharata, and they're all translations of the mathematical encoding of the consciousness of that particular dimensional field. Now, this Cathara grid is going to be a key to lots and lots of things. This is located in your body as well, and there are very specific points on the body that correspond to those 12 points of frequency. When you know where those points are, you can begin to learn to run frequency in a way that you can begin to reset your divine blueprint, which means reset what your D12 mathematical program was when you first came into the time matrix. You can reset it. Each one of these centers corresponds to one dimensional grid, or one flashline sequence. Center 1 connects to D1. Center 2 connects to D2. 3 to D3. Okay? Now 12 connects to D12. All right? The process of bringing in the frequency of your D12 Maharata crystals current means you have to bring it through and down into the Cathara grid. Now there's two ways you can do this. There's various ways you can do it. One of the ways we're going to learn is, and what you're going to learn tomorrow is a client session, where after we learn how to run this stuff with ourselves, we're going to learn how to run it for somebody else. You can run it through the top of the head. You can run the D12 current through the top of the head, through the Cathara grid inside the body, or from the feet. We tend to start from the feet. Now, this right now is just an image that hangs there. If you can realize that this is not just a thing that exists within your body, but it also exists within everything manifest in this time matrix, in any time matrix, because it is the base core mathematical program. That means this is the first layer of how energy is in consciousness is going to circulate in the system, in the hologram. This is what gives us our 12-dimensional fields. Each one of these, now I'll talk about the other 3 that go with the primal sound fields in a minute, but our first 12-dimensional fields, D1 through 12, each one of these centers, called Cathara centers or Cathara spheres, holds the whole mathematical program for that dimensional field. When it comes to biological life forms, it also holds the whole program for their genetics, for their DNA template. So when you begin to work with the Cathara centers in the Cathara grid on a being or a planet, you are literally going in to the core programming centers, like the heart of the computer program. That could be scary if we were given technologies that we could make decisions and accidentally make messes with, or if we were putting knowledge on the planet that crazy people that call themselves scientists and warriors might adopt to try to hurt people with. The reason we can use these technologies right now is because any of the technologies that require using the higher dimensional frequencies and knowing the subtle anatomy of persons, planets, and things requires the use of D12 frequency to activate and open. You can't access this template in anything without D12 frequency. D12 frequency is the Christos frequency that is not polarized. A being that is in polarity consciousness, that is using twisted idea forms, cannot fully run D12 frequency. Because if a person was running D12 frequency, they would not have the twists in the consciousness in that way. Now, the decision, it typically comes to this. If a person wanted to say be bad, say, I know I'm an anti-Christos person, I want to, run a bad agenda here. I'm going to learn these technologies to hurt people, with them. Well, they can have that nasty intention if they want to, but it's not going to change the fact that they have to do something called activating their Maharic seal in order to get that frequency into the body where they can use any of this technology anyway. That means they have to, at least at those moments when they want to try to run it, they have to run divine blueprint current, whether they like it or not, or they can't run the frequencies. So there's a built-in protection with this. You can't harm yourself with it. If you are trying to do an intention or trying to make something happen that is not in your divine blueprint or somebody you're working with, the avatar level of you or that person will override it, simply. There is the original intentions of every being, every person, you and anybody else, is encoded within the universal, for our time matrix, the universal divine blueprint. We have a planetary divine blueprint as far as how the planet was supposed to evolve, ideally. There is species divine blueprints. There are personal divine blueprints. When you run D12 frequency, it is automatically aligning, mathematically, all of the dimensional levels for the moment that you're running it. It is aligning you with the divine blueprint. The more you run the D12 currents, the more of the divine blueprint you will reset in your being, and the more you will hold the consciousness of Christos consciousness, which is unity consciousness. A being that's in full unity consciousness can still get hopping mad at something, but mad moves through in a way. It doesn't stick, because you understand the lesson behind it, but you also understand the emotion, and that letting it move is all right, but you won't hurt someone with it. You'll also understand that no matter how awful or bad or horrendous somebody is, you still love them. It doesn't mean you let them walk all over you either. You learn soft love and you learn tough love when necessary. Excuse me, no, you're not going to do that. That's not nice. You're going to hurt you and me? I don't think so. So you learn how to balance power as you work with these frequencies. So this Cathara grid is going to be the key to many things. It's going to be the key to learning how and where to run frequency in the body for a Maharic recoding process session, which is the beginning of recoding your core template. It is also, for people that are taking the Templar course, this, believe it or not, is a Stargate map. Once you know where in the galaxies each one of those dots corresponds to, you've got a map. And you've also got what are called Cathara lines, which are the connection areas between them. Now in the body, that implies there are spots in your body that hold these programs, and there are lines that run between them, which means one program can speak to the other. So the information can speak to each level of your consciousness, because you have part of your consciousness stationed here, here, and here. They can all communicate with each other through the Cathara lines. When you take it into the macrocosm, you will find that each of these represent 12 primary stargates that exist in our time matrix. And there's lots of little stargates that come off them, but they're the main ones. And these are the main conduits between them. And each one of these places has a name as far as the star systems that have been identified out there, that we've identified out there. We're very much in the center of all this. Earth is one of the main stargate areas. That's why our race got in trouble 25,000 years ago. Now, this is a little hard to see because I had to squish it up, okay? And by the way, these aren't computer graphics. Most of them are hand-drawn things and done with little tiny pieces of paste up that take forever and ever because I'm not that great at computer graphics. So they might not be perfect, but I hope you can appreciate the effort and the time that went into trying to prepare these. All right, this one shows you a 15-dimensional time matrix, right? Remember that oval shape, 15-dimensional time matrix, dimension 1 through 12. Then we have dimension 13, 14, and 15, primal light fields, right? And then the levels of the sound fields, and then source here. So what you really have in terms of Cathara grids, those core programs, those core maps of how the shape the energy takes as it comes in, you have the first 12 go from D1 to 12. Then you have another set where number 1 on this second grid would be where 12 is there. So they link together. So you have here the primal light fields connect to the dimensional fields, to the full dimensional fields. These are where the flash lines start to flash. These are where the flash lines just stay on, and these are where they just stay off. If you are going to do ascension, if you're going to literally take your body and your memory out with you, so when you get home to God, you'll remember that you went. That's really the difference. You either go back as space dust, or you go back as somebody who remembers that they were somebody when they came in. I mean, you can't not go back to God, is what I'm saying. It's just the quality of the experience that makes it worth trying. You know? The process of ascension would be the process of moving through these stargates, because these are energy centers, but they are also energy opening and closing points, energy interface points, where in the planetary Templar and in the universal Templar and the galactic Templar, they operate as stargates, opening and closing areas where energy can pass through from one dimension to another or from one harmonic to another. So you have 12. If you're going to ascend and you want to get out of the dimensionalized systems where you have three-dimensional hologram, because once you start to get up in here in the primal light fields, you don't have a three-dimensional hologram in quite the same way. It's much more internalized, and you can still make pictures in your consciousness, but you know there's no such thing as you having a body outside of you. But if somebody down here saw you, you'd look like flaming gas, right? Like balls of flaming gaseous light, like suns. But these would be in the universal and galactic and planetary context. These Cathara grids, Cathara grid 1 and Cathara grid 2, are stargates that you'd have to go through these. If you were down here in density 1, you could go out through density 2, you could go out through 3, or you could go out through 4, but you'd have to find your way up to get out of the stargate systems. Now, to go through a gate, you would have to have the encoding of that gate in your DNA template, or your body form would explode in your consciousness fragment if you tried to pass through it if you didn't have the coding in your body. Everybody that comes into the time matrix picks up all of these mathematical programs that are stored in each one of those centers. And that is our core template that literally our morphogenetic field is built on before we even have a DNA template. And then later, as we become biological, our DNA template is encoded with those mathematics that become chemical and elemental combinations within the body. So the two Cathara grids, this shows you how 1 through 12 links here, and then the primal light fields start another. There's another 12 points on this one. They actually both look like this, but I had to squash that one up a little to fit it on the diagram, but they're both shaped like this. That is a classic Cathara level 1 12-tree grid, and it's inside everybody and everything. Rocks even have them. Okay, we'll go on to the next one, please, honey. I think I wanted to put that
You
one.
want to go back to the words?
I think I did, yeah.
Or do you want to go to this one?
Yeah, I want to go on this one quick, because I think there's some I want to cover on that. I'll be thorough. Okay. Oops, can we drop it down just a little, please? Thank you. Okay. The 5 primary scalar templates of dimensionalization are formed on scalar shields, composed of sets of 3 dimensions, which form 5 3-dimensional spheres of energy called Hoover bodies. That's a mouthful. What does that mean, right? The diagram will help. We will see the diagram soon on this. This is where we can start talking about level 2 of the Cathara grid. We have the Cathara grid level 1. And if you want to conceptualize what that Cathara grid looks like inside of something, picture chelons. Picture this structure made out of little crystals of what look like frozen light, because that's what chelons look like. They're particle units that build up to 3-dimensional structures called chelons, and they build up to form chelon codes, which are more complex crystalline structures. Imagine that 12-tree Cathara grid is inside of you, inside of all things, and it exists as a crystal structure. Very pretty, actually. Now, on that crystal structure, it holds the program for more crystalline structures to build. We start out as crystal. This is why humans have always, for eons, had a very special relationship with crystals. There's a consciousness in the elements of crystals that a part of us knows very well, because we're made of that too. So there's you can work with crystals and you can understand their consciousness, because you actually have a part of that consciousness within your own body. So if you picture that level 1 Cathara grid as a crystalline grid within your body, the next level of crystalline grid that forms, it's still made of chelons, is the level 2 grid. And this is where we get things called scalar shields, which are really little crystalline units, chelon units, that form scalar grids, more little flash line sequences. We start out with each dimension having its own set of flash line sequences, but then within any one of those light bulbs, you can make 1 million new little light bulbs as long as you use the program from that one. This is where form differentiation can take place. Now, the shields are the things where differentiation begins. We have the universal shield, which would have all the mathematical programs of the Cathara grid, and everything in the whole universe that ever passed through here in differentiation would be encoded in the universal shield for our time matrix. But there are actually a set of shields, one for each density level, one for harmonic universe 1, harmonic universe 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then there's a cosmic shield that all the time matrices, all many, many, many infinite, too many to count ones, are encoded into the cosmic shield. Now, the planetary shields are, again, they're 5 shields. We're going to work with 4 of them at first, which would be the ones that correspond to dimensions 1 through 12. The shields are the next stage up from Cathara level 1. They're a crystalline grid that is another grid through which energy circulates. If you look at pure raw energy coming in, pure consciousness coming in from source, first it comes through a Cathara grid just to get itself in to the dimensional framework. From there, it wants to become something individual. So it takes on more differentiation. It takes on another mathematical pattern on top of, but it's built out of, the original 12-tree grid mathematical pattern. But it takes those mathematics and can combine them in all sorts of ways. In our shields, in a planetary shield, it holds the very particular evolutionary blueprints that were put in for that planet. Every person has a set of shields as well. What's interesting is the shields are where they are the parts of our anatomy that hold our individuated stations of consciousness here and also up the densities. We have a personal shield that corresponds to dimension 1, 2, and 3. We have our soul shield that corresponds to dimensions 4, 5, and 6, where our D4, 5, 6 consciousness is stationed. We have an oversoul shield, an avatar shield, a rishik shield. These are parts of our subtle body anatomy, and I'll show you a diagram that helps to conceptualize that soon. They're important to understand because from the mathematical programs of individuation that are held within the shields of a planet or a person, there are circulations of energy that are directed into manifestation, where flashline sequences are taught to act a certain way toward each other that will create certain effects. The first effect is the creation of what's called a Hoover body. Hoover, it refers to a light sound grid. It's a three-dimensional, made of three different flashline sequences, circulation of energy, an effective energy that is created because the flash lines, the little flashing on and off scalar waves in a shield, are telling energy particles, units of consciousness, the primal life force currents, telling them to work in a certain way toward each other. And that way makes them create spheres of energy. This has to do with Merkaba mechanics as well. Creating spirals of energy and putting one spiral this way and another this way creates a space in between the two that creates an electromagnetic domain that makes a sphere of energy within which manifestation can take place. Now, the Hoover bodies, there are 5 Hoover bodies in one time matrix. A Hoover body is something that would surround a whole universe. This is where if you went out forever and ever and ever and ever to the limits of space, you would find that space starts to bend, and so does time. Where your clocks would start doing weird stuff, and where magnetics would do things that you wouldn't think they would normally do, as if you were going around a curve. Because you are. There's the Hoover body programming, where we're actually living within elliptical-shaped spheres. Spheres within spheres within spheres. So, each universe has a sphere. A set of, well, let's take one harmonic universe, okay? Because remember, there's 5 harmonic universes, so when I'm saying one sphere, I'm actually talking about sets of 5 of them. But let's say harmonic universe 1, where we live, okay? The whole universe has a sphere of energy around it that contains it and creates it as an electromagnetic domain. The shields hold, they're the crystalline grid that holds the mathematical instructions that allow those circulations of energy to take place that allow that sphere to form. So we have a universal sphere. Now, the planets and galaxies within that sphere. Every galaxy would have its own sphere around it, a Hoover body around it. Each planet in each galaxy would have a Hoover body around it. And each person, each plant, each animal, each rock, everything on the planets, you have a Hoover body around you. This is where we start to understand what our auric field is, that word that's been really popular for especially about 100 years in metaphysical societies about things like that energy field around you. What is that? Where does it come from? This is the beginning of the formation of that on a personal level. A planet has an auric field too. So does a galaxy, so does a universe, so does a time matrix. We're really living in sets of spheres from the universal level all the way down to the personal level. Okay. So that will be level 2. We'll talk about that a little bit. And what's interesting, some of the things that are coming through at the end of the new information that's coming through is dealing with a part of the Hoover bodies that they didn't address here in the earlier parts, but it's called the radial body. And the radial body is something that I'll introduce tomorrow toward the end, that I'm really excited about the information that comes through, because this is getting into the part of thought manifestation, where we start to understand at least the parts that are involved with how does this part of our mind get to manifest something, and why whenever you try to manifest something it rarely comes out the way you want it, and what can you do about that. We're starting to get into this. But if we need to understand first what Hoover bodies are, basically, they're the spheres of energy that form from the mathematical programs of the scalar shields, which can be visualized as crystalline shields, crystalline discs of energy that hold the mathematical template, and all of those are built on the Cathara level 112 tree grid underneath them, which is another crystalline structure that holds the mathematical patterns. All right, the Cathara grid and the multi-levels of the morphogenetic structure built upon it. These are the causal element behind and within all manifestation. They are the core holographic template. So there's like you will take a Cathara grid back down to the units that form it. That's where you go from Cathara grid to kilons to partikai units to partikai and particum to partikai to nothing source. Okay, when we're moving backward out of manifestation. So these are literally a stage in the manifestation process, and they're a part of our anatomy that we carry with us all the time. We have shields and we have Hoover bodies. Our shields and Hoover bodies connect to the planetary shields and Hoover bodies. That's how we get energy into our bodies. Once we're on a planet, the universal Hoover bodies and shields and Cathara grid send frequency down into the galactic one, then from the galactic one into the planetary one. From the planetary one, the energy is passed through into all the life forms on the planet through their own set of corresponding subtle body anatomies. So there is always an intimate relationship taking place between persons, planets, galaxies, and source. We will have more of source energy within us and more of source consciousness within us if we can open up all of the conduits that are available to allow more of source frequency to flow through, because frequency is energy and energy is conscious. That means all energy, even the things that science says that's energy but it's not a person, it's a person. I always ask, who is it? Because it's kind of like Horton Hears a Who, that little book they used to have kids. Yeah. What you think is an it may very well be a who. Energy, everything. Really, they're just like God is an it, but it's a who. It's definitely a sentient identity with intelligence and, you know, its own will and creation and sentience. Energy, all energy has its own sentience. That means there's not a darn thing out there that's not conscious. That can be a real problem if you're trying to be a vegetarian because you figure it's really bad to eat animals, but it's better to eat plants because like animals are closer to humans and they're like more conscious and they're like beings. Plants are kind of like more like beings, but kind of raw material. There really is no raw material. It's all consciousness. It's all a manifestation of source. So it all needs to be treated with respect and reference. Right now we're stuck on a planet where we have to eat because our DNA is messed up. We used to be breatharians, by the way. We didn't have to eat. We had a very different internal structure at that point. There are certain organs that just weren't necessary. We were immortal in those bodies. And what allowed us to sustain those bodies were Merkaba mechanics. We would consciously direct what our energy fields were doing, so whenever our energy levels started to drop, we would bring more primal life force in. We didn't have to take energy from anything. We weren't energy vampires. Right now on the planet, we've been turned into energy vampires. We think of energy vampires in a negative sense was, those people that try to suck energy off other people. And there are like nasty things in the astral field that try to do that. There are things that in the ancient legends they called succubi that try to attach themselves to your field and suck all your life force out. When you think about what we're doing on the planet just to sustain our bodies, what do? We kill stuff to take its life force energy to sustain our own. That was not the natural pattern for humans or animals on this planet. That was not part of the divine blueprint. That has been an adaptation that was necessary once our currents were blocked and we couldn't sustain here. And we couldn't get back out. We had to do something in the meantime. And certain allowances were made and agreements were made between animal and plant forms that they agreed to allow us to do that because we would take into our bodies who they were and we would help them ascend out of here faster. So there's a whole other way of looking at food when you start to understand energy, when you start to understand what our templates are about and the fact that energy is conscious. When we are running currents, we are running people. Most of Mars, parts of our own. Now, every life force current that exists, if you were to approach it, there's two ways you can approach it. You can approach it as an it, as a thing that's not a person, or as a who. You will learn much, much more with every life force current you learn to work with every symbol code you learn to work with, if you treat it as a who and give it due respect. Say, okay, whoever you are, I honor you as a consciousness form. Please share with me what you know. You might be amazed. There are codes that we'll use in Cathara healing, symbol codes, that literally a part of our own consciousness exists in exactly that shape. If you were to meet that part of yourself, that's like parts that make up your body and your emotional body, if you were to meet your emotional body, if it was going to jump outside of you and stand there and look at you, it would be made of symbol shapes. It would look like a two-dimensional, geometrical, changing, moving, mathematical program of light. And it would look at you and think, you look pretty strange too. But the thing is, there's no difference between the you that's here and that you. They're both you. They're both a part of you. So if we start to realize that everything carries consciousness, this is conscious, you can start to do neat little things like try to feel who your refrigerator is. They're about the hardest. Okay, you can go out and feel a plant, and you can actually, it might start telepathing to you, and you start to realize they talk and they know English. They're a lot smarter than we give them credit for. They're multilingual. But if you try to talk to refrigerators, the consciousness is a little harder to reach. You're going into core elemental consciousness that's been mutated and abused and turned into stuff it wasn't supposed to be. So you can feel it, and you can almost feel its pain and its deadness. There's like a deadness to it. but it won't usually talk to you telepathically. Okay. Anyway, yeah. Some of the little tangents are really, really good because you won't find them in the book. Okay. Now, this is where we get into the healing part here. All manifest dis-ease, or a lack of ease, dis-ease, originates through distortions in the natural electrotonal programs, the Partakai unit arrangements, of the Cathara grid and the Huva body scalar shields. Any condition of disease, and that includes diseases of your bank account or your family history or anything. It's not just disease in your body, it's disease that's projecting out into your body into chaos events as well. Originates because there is something in the Cathara grid levels that are holding distortions that are no longer in line with the divine blueprint. Because if we were all following our divine blueprint, there's only very few of us there's a lot of people that take the argument that, oh, well, a lot of us come in, even if we're Senate Masters, to have like really, really rough lives just to learn stuff. Hate to tell you, if you're an Ascended Master, you know you don't have to go in to have a really, really rough life to learn stuff. You just choose to learn stuff in a joyful manner. We tried that at once. People sometimes ask, how did humans, if all this mutation has taken place? And there's really, the game of victim-victimizer really isn't. How is it that we ended up getting victimized so badly? Why did we allow this to happen? Why did our race create this to happen? We had a really dumb idea once upon a time. That's how it happened. We saw... we had a part of our family way up there when we were the Christos races who made some really awful, horrendous decisions and turned themselves into things we couldn't even fathom how they possibly could act so horribly. Because they forgot about love, and they forgot about being nice, and they were going to destroy this time matrix. And we could not figure out, the nice ones that didn't make that twist, couldn't figure out what in the world could make a being be like that. We had no idea. We wanted to help, but we could. If you can't understand somebody or why they're acting off the wall and nuts, how can you help them? You just kind of in horror. Well, when we were founders races, the same people that are here now, we're founders races in those spaces in space-time. That's still going on right now in those spaces in space-time. There were groups that made some really bad decisions and got their gene codes all tied up in knots, which tied their consciousness up in knots. And they became very intelligent but very, very dangerous. They became an evil force. Now, evil is live spelled backwards or live spelled backwards. They became a force that was trying to destroy this time matrix rather than to support the original will of Source. We got ourselves into this mess because we asked a really dumb question. Was, how could they do stuff like this? How could they turn themselves into beings that could act that way? What could possibly... How could they possibly do this with themselves? Why can't they understand? Oh, that was the big one. Why can't they understand? What does it mean that their templates are messed up, that they can't understand? How could you forget your connection to God? How do they do that? You can't, I mean, we're a little way up there going, they couldn't. You can't, forget your connection to God. I mean, it's common knowledge. Everybody knows that. Well, as a race, we decided to find out because we wanted to help the ones of our own kind that had gotten twisted in their genetic codes and twisted in their consciousness. We wanted to help, and we knew we didn't know how. How do you reach them? How do you fix them? They don't want to be fixed. That was the biggest problem. They decided they wanted to take over things. They wanted to, they were going to be God, which makes no sense if you understand God, because it doesn't work that way. You can't, hijack part of God and, move it over here, especially when everything takes place in the same space. So it made no rational sense to us whatsoever of how their thought processes could be going the way they were that would make them consciously choose to take a stance against Source and against the Christos and against their own family who loved them very much. So we agreed to enter a similar type of experience where we allowed ourselves to become distorted, not fully, but enough that we could understand how they could kill each other, how they could act with hatred, how they could act unlovingly, and how they could walk around and forget what it meant to be a part of God. We allowed ourselves to take on the disease. And we've done a darn good job of it. We should be proud of ourselves. But now it's time that if we don't bring it back around, we're going to fall to it like other races who tried the same thing have done. We were a guardian race that came in and said, we have to fix this problem. And we were courageous. Oh, geez, it's like agreeing to have cancer so you can figure out how to cure it. It's like, thanks a lot. You know, like, do I really, really want to do that? Does it really mean that much to me to find a cure for this disease? It takes a lot of love to, on behalf of, if you're sitting there and you're fine, your templates are fine, and you're looking at this bunch of people who used to be your family who are acting like murderous, violent maniacs, you still love them because you know that you're all one and you're all part of the same source, but they don't remember that anymore. All they want to do is kill you. It takes a lot of love, Christos love, to look at them and say, we've got to reach them somehow. They're fallen members of our own. No matter how bad they turn themselves into being, we still love them. And if we don't help them out, they're never going to get out. They're going to be space dust. And it's a shame because they had so much more potential than being space dust. Space dust isn't bad. But if you had the potential to be an avatar, if that's what your template was, it's really a shame to settle for space dust. You know, you're a lot happier if you take your memory with you when you go home to God, because then you recognize that you are home with God, and you recognize what a wonderful journey it was, and you remember something from it. It's like, why bother going to Tahiti and seeing the beautiful scenery if you're going to come back and have your memory wiped? Why bother? You know, when a race falls, which is what happened, a part of our races fell, and we wanted to help them. And this was before we were humans, by the way. We were Lyrans once upon a time. The Christos founders' races were Lyran. And the Lyran, there was a period of time called the Lyran Wars. It was 250 billion years ago in linear time terms. This is when it all started. So right now, what we're working through is finally, after many, many flashline sequences have been traveled, it's time to wake up and remember we were the healers. We were the ones that came in to fix this. And we've put ourselves among them. And right now they're taking over our planet, actually. The consciousness of what's called the fallen angelics has really run rampant here for 25,000 years. So now as we learn to wake up our Cathara centers and wake up our bodies and wake up our avatar selves, we'll also wake up to the fact that we were each a part of a cosmic mission. We were created, or we wouldn't be in, the body forms are in. We were created to help heal this time matrix and to help bring those fallen families back before they destroyed the time matrix itself, because they were going to destroy the system. Because what they were doing and the ways they were using energy was going to make the whole system implode in on itself. And we were here to stop them from doing that, but stop them by bringing them back into healing, not by destroying them. So this is part of the drama that as we wake up in this century, this is part of what our job is. And as you start to understand a little bit more about yourself as a soul, what you came to do, you'll find that leads to understanding what as an oversoul you came to do, and then what as an avatar you came to do, which is where your galactic contract is, where you're not just involved with planetary healing. What you do here will affect galaxies. And that's when you start to feel the breath of what we're working with when we're working with Source. Okay, let's see. Okay, healing occurs through regenesis of the natural electrotonal programs of the holographic template. Now, if you have these sets of shields I talked about, the scalar grids on the level 2 of the Cathara grid, the shields originally had a very specific program. There's one shield called the Maharic shield that is the one that's made out of Maharata current, or Mahara current, whichever you want to call it, which is D12 current. That's your divine blueprint. That shield held your individuation, whatever it is you were. If you were an ant, you'd have one too, but you would have a different mathematical program, obviously, or you'd be a person. You have a D12 shield. That shield originally set the mathematical templates for the 4 shields below. You have a Rishik shield, which is your primal light one, your first stage into the time matrix. And then from that, your divine blueprint emerged. Your divine blueprint, which is where your individuation started to come into being. See, before that, everybody else was part of a Rishik shield, and we were all conscious, but we were all like big suns and balls of light. We all looked the same, and we all thought the same. We all knew ourselves as divine expressions of Source, and we all knew that we wanted to explore what it would be like if we were different. So we decided to come into the time matrix. That's part of what the lessons were, that we just wanted to know what it would feel like to be in here. So after you come from the primal light fields, you have your divine blueprint level, and that is literally a shield. It is a crystalline structure built first upon the Cathara grid, which is anchoring in 12 points your consciousness into the dimensional field. Then there is putting the program of your individuation and your individuality in. Your inner Christos, your individual part of the universal template, of the galactic template, of the planetary template, and of your personal shield setup. You have a direct connection to cosmos, universe, galaxy, planet. and race that you're a part of through your shield programs. You actually have an energy connection between all of those other systems and you through the shields. You have your Maharic shield, and that's what we're going to learn to activate in Cathara Level 1, because the Maharic shield and bringing that back into manual activation. See, they'd be activated normally if D12 frequency was at a critical mass in the planetary grids. You wouldn't have to do it manually. This planet has been in an anti-Christo state for ages now. It's going to take a long time before it's able to even sustain people with a Maharic shield that's fully activated. You'd blow the planet up if you fully activated your Maharic shield, one person. You would actually blow the planet up right now because it's too much frequency. So, a Maharic shield activation, a full 12-strand Maharic shield activation, you'd have 12 strands of DNA fully activated, turned on all the time. You would be a fully focused avatar. But there's considerations. Now, we are all avatars, but what we're learning to do first is to reach those levels of awareness, but not worry about having our 12 strands activated right here, right now, all the time. Because any one of us that does that and was irresponsible enough to do it if we could, would literally blow the planetary grids and destroy the place. So right now, what we're aiming for is 6-strand sustained activation over a 12-year period, which means we have time to get the strands up. It doesn't mean you won't activate higher strands. It means that you will activate them when needed. When you need D12 frequency, you will open and activate the Maharic shield and template and bring D12 frequency current into your body. But you won't just leave it on. It's like leaving the lights on. You know, you can have a very high light bill. No. It's like learning to control how much energy and consciousness you're going to bring in, because you realize that what you do with your systems are going to affect the systems around you. So we're going to learn how to do this. We're going to learn to do the Maharic shield. That is the first and most important core teaching technology of the Cathara program. If you don't do the Maharic seal, like a lot of people learn this just for safety, how to do a Maharic seal for safety purposes, to keep your fields clear, because it's one of the advantages it will give you. But some people say, oh, I remember one lady, bless her, in a workshop. She went through all of this. We got this far at the end. She says, oh, I don't need a Maharic shield. Wait a minute. You know, somehow I haven't gotten this across to the person how important it is. Well, I'm safe. Archangel Michael's protecting me. So I don't care who's protecting you. You still need a Maharic shield. You're saying you don't need your Divine Christos blueprint because you got Archangel Michael. Isn't there a little something wrong with that? Yeah. There's a lot more to a Maharic shield than simply the fact that it brings you protection in the different levels of your auric field. So you have, you can do things more safely, and you can walk in places that are astral messes and they won't attach to you and things. Literally, if you had 12 strands activated, you would have it would imply that your Maharic shield was activated at a full D12 level, and that you would have D12 current running through the body, and that as long as you kept that all turned on, you wouldn't be here. You would be in liquid light right now. What an avatar does is consciously learn to direct what the DNA is doing. It doesn't stay in 12-strand or higher activation all the time, which means it would be out of density all the time. It learns to turn itself off and on. You get to the point where, when you're a fully actualized avatar or rishi or ascendant master, you can choose when you're going to flash yourself on into the hologram and when not to. So you simply will turn the DNA on to a certain level, and you see, DNA is encoded into the template. So whether or not you're having a biological fleshy body with you, you still have a DNA imprint. Rocks have their own type of imprint that it doesn't look like DNA exactly like biological DNA does, but there is a template that works the same way. So anyway, regenesis. This is what we are going to be doing in Cathara healing. Biological regenesis of the Divine Blueprint Maharic Shield template. We're going to use the Maharic Shield to progressively bring back into the body the original mathematical program upon which you entered manifestation, in order to reset any distortions that you've picked up along the way, not just in this life, but in any of the other 1,728 implied time vectors that you are simultaneously existing in right now. This will be the body that you will transmute any of that mess through. And it doesn't mean you're taking on other people's karma, or you're going to have this whole karmic mess come up in your face. The problem is, if you don't work to clear these imprints, they are going to activate in your DNA because the planetary grids are activating. People talk about the karmic pattern and, don't ask for fast ascension because somebody up there, the lords of karma, will release it fast and they'll make you have, destroy your life in 4 days flat as your karmic imprint explodes in your face, right? Well, we teach you how to have that not happen, all right? You will have karma come up, and the race karma is coming up right now. That's why it's going to be crazy in the next 10 years. You're going to watch stuff happen that is take a front row seat, because there's going to be stuff going down on this planet in the next 10 to 12 years that have not been here for thousands and thousands of years. It's take a front row seat and duck and wear a bulletproof vest, because it's going to be a bit wild. Now,
BS proof vest.
yeah, that too. Yeah, and look out for soothsayers and silver-tongued devils with pretty faces. Yeah, they're popular in the New Age movement. There's a few, let's say, fallen angelics that take on that guise to seduce people into following false ascension mechanics so they can use people's bodies to get to the planetary grids. We'll talk about that in the Templar workshop. Anyway. Do I need this one? Let me see. Code represent primal substance and areas that contradict. And we all know that. Okay. Start to scale it.
Go to each page. Could you say what page number it is? That way also when we're tracking on the page, we'll know what number it is.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Page 34.
Okay, page 30. This is page 34 at the bottom. The bottom sequence of page numbers, 34. Okay, it's the Universal Templar Complex, where we were talking about the level 1 Cathara 12 tree grid, and we were talking about the shields of the level 2 Cathara grid. The planetary shields, we're talking about planetary level first. The Universal Templar is the one that involves the universal gates and grids, the galactic ones, and even into the planetary. So you have a Universal Templar, you have a Galactic Templar, you have a Planetary Templar, and you have a Personal Templar. They all follow this order, and they all have this structure. Now, the shields, these are the diagrams to represent the shields. There are 4 primary shields that go between Dimension 1 and Dimension 12. So there are 4 shields that connect you to your Christos self. Then there's another 5th shield that connects you to your Rishi self, and another one that connects you into the primal sound, set of them, that connects you into the Ascended Master's level of identity in the primal sound fields. The first shield is called the telluric shield. It's the gross matter shield of Dimensions 1, 2, 3, which is density 1. It's one shield. And there are parts, we'll get to other graphs where we show you where these, once they're activated, create energy fields in and around your body when they're activated. Okay? B is a Doratic shield. Dora is a word in Anahazi that refers to the soul. It means soul. And it refers to that very specific part of the consciousness and anatomy that is stationed in Dimensions 4, 5, and 6. It's called the Dora. So the Doratic of the Dora shield is your density 2 shield, Dimensions 4, 5, and 6. The next one, again, the name is Tura, so they call it the Turic shield. Tura is a word that means oversoul, and it also refers to the dimensional field of 7, 8, and 9, which is the etheric matter density. So you have a physical shield, which controls the mathematical program of your D1, 2, 3 parts, which is your physical body here, your mental body, and your physical body, emotional body, and mental body. Okay, they would be controlled by this shield here, shield 1, the telluric shield. Second shield is your soul shield. You can look at it easily. The Doratic shield is your soul shield. This is the shield that has your Dimension 4, 5, and 6 aspects to consciousness, and that would be your astral identity, and what's called your archetypal identity, your archetype, and your celestial or angelic mind identity. All right, so there's parts of mind that go with this too. Parts of your own identity. We have the lower mind would be D3 here, the middle mind would be D6 here, the higher mind would be D9 here, the avatar mind would be, the Christed mind would be D12 up there. The second levels of them correspond to the emotional level of the bodies. So you have a lower emotional, mid-emotional, higher emotional, Christos emotional. The emotional are also the parts that are connected to the elements. So they correspond directly to the elements of molecules that you're made out of, that your physical body is made out of. And below that, you have the things that the elements themselves are made out of, which are subatomic units and quarks and all sorts of little neat little things that are that stage between it wasn't manifest, now it is, and it's not something solid yet, and it's not a compound yet. It's not fully atomic yet. Okay? So these pertain to not only understanding how stargates operate, because when we get into the Templar class, these diagrams will be used to explain things about the planetary and universal Templar, but they're also things that directly correspond to you and your body. The Maharic shield, which is this one, this is the one we're going to be activating, because with the dimensions, the way dimensions are structured, dimension 1, or dimension 12, I'll start at the top. Dimension 12 holds all the mathematical programs of every dimension below it. That's how the dimensions work. That's how the currents work. That's why D12 frequency, once it's activated in the body, drawn through all of the shields, will literally reset the mathematical coding all the way down through to the original divine blueprint. So the lower a dimension is, the ones higher than it control it. Works the same way with stargates. Works the same way with Cathara centers and DNA strands. When we get into DNA, we'll talk about the Cathara grid, and each one of these holds each one of the Cathara centers in the 12-tree grid holds the mathematical program for one of the 12 strands. So if you want to help heal on strand 3, which corresponds to your D3 mental body, you would want to run energy into Cathara center 3. That also corresponds to chakra 3. There's a direct relationship. This is really a simple system. Once you get the basics down, it's very simple. You have a connection in your bodies that goes between Cathara centers into shields, that goes also into Merkaba levels that we'll talk about probably tomorrow. It'll be at the Merkaba levels. That goes right into your chakra systems, your axiotonal lines, which are vertical lines that run through the system. It's all connected, and it's connected through the numbers. Numbers alone have their own importance in mathematical sequencing. Numbers are symbols also that stand for energy signatures and energy commands. So the numbering on here isn't random. The numbering that you'll see, it goes through everything. The DNA templates 1 through 12 correspond to the Cathara grids 1 through 12, correspond to the chakras 1 through 12. And when we get into the higher ones, we're dealing with 13, 14, and 15 in the primal sound fields. There's other sets of information that go with that as well. But the system is really quite simple. You know, if you want to work on DNA strand 3, you go for chakra 3. That's where you would want to induce one of the symbol programs that you might be working with, and that would take it right in through the shield that corresponded to 3. Now remember, shields are 3-dimensional, so if you're working on strand 3, you'd have this. There are 3 what are called signets in every shield. They're consolidated points of frequency that control the shield itself. So this whole shield is built on a mathematical program that's held within these 3 points, the whole mathematical program. And those 3 points correspond to these 3 points. So these 3 things here are actually the core mathematical programs in the shields, and from there, the diversification of those mathematical programs comes out. So if you were going to work to fix strand 3, and to work on your mental body, for instance, you would work with Cathara center 3. That would take you right into the telluric shield, which is shield A, because that's dimension 1, 2, and 3 level. And you would run frequency through chakra 3, which connects you to that level. And that the chakras literally are where your consciousness flows through that dimensional field. So your mental body is a part of D3. And where you are here is your lower mental body. And it's not meaning lower bad. It's meaning just lower than the higher density levels. So there's a direct correspondence between all of these. The one that's not shown on here is the Rishik shield. That's the 5th one. That's the antimatter shield, which is like a shield of standing light. That corresponds to dimensions 13, 14, and 15 of your identity. But first we're going to work on the first 12 levels, because you have to open those currents in your body before you can even get to the Rishik shield. So we're going to be working with, and probably after lunch today, we're going to go into technique. There's several techniques that are associated with beginning to open these frequencies in the body and helping yourself to do so. There's a technique called the mentor, which is the beginning of a technique that has to do with much more than just putting a part of yourself over here to talk to. That's what we do in the mentor exercise. We'll get into that when we come back from lunch. But anyway, these are the basic structures of universal order, and they are the same structures that you will find are in your bodies, and we'll continue to go through this where we find where in the bodies these parts are located, because it helps to understand the map to your own body and your own subtle bodies. What do we have here?
This is part for our purpose, it's down to summarise now because the next page is actually we're into the summary of the chapter, transduction sequence and the
Yeah,
summary.
I really wanted to show the before lunch, the bodies, where the stuff goes in the body. How far back is that?
Chapter 2.
Let me see.
I'll have to find it.
Okay. I just want to say something because I'm really dying to show you where these things plug into the physical body, but there's several things I'd have to cover first. There's probably about a half hour to 45 minutes more of presentation before I can have fun and show you where these things plug into the body. Do you want to do it before or after lunch? Good idea. Okay. Good idea. What I will... Yeah, okay, yeah. That's too far to go. Yeah, that's way too far. Okay. So when we get back, you'll find out where these energy structures plug into your physical body, where your Cathara centers are located. We'll explore where your chakras are located, where your crystal seals are located, where your shields are located, because you actually have these things. And it's so fun once you realize you have them, and you realize what you can do to start playing with energy with them.